Dick Van Dyke has come dangerously close to death 3 times in the past decade. When the vehicle caught fire, they were crawling on the ground when there were flames. However, something spectacular always happened. He is married to a 99-year-old woman who resembles his grandchild. Even now, he exercises more than most people his age. In addition, he just revealed his 100th birthday secret to the world. Even his closest friends, who are nearly 100 years old, find it hard to believe what he's doing. Dick Van Dyke was born on December 13, 1925, in West Plains, Missouri. His father, Loren, was a door-to-door salesman, while his mother, Hazel, worked as a stenographer. They had very little in those days. Loren earned roughly $400 annually, or $26 each week. The community had less than 5,000 residents, and conditions were difficult. However, Dick will never forget a bit of that small-town existence. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, back to the topic. What we were talking about was, he worked hard and maintained a modest appeal while becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars as a result. They then proceeded to Danville, Illinois. Things became fascinating at that point. Dick was surrounded by people who would go on to become renowned while attending high school in the late 1930s and early 1940s. He attended the same school as Donald O'Connor, a dancer from Singin' in the Rain, and Bobby Short, who would go on to become a New York vocalist. One of Gene Hackman's closest buddies was his cousin. At least 3 members of a class of slightly under 200 would go on to achieve national fame. There aren't many chances like that. However, it gave Dick hope that he could accomplish something significant as well. Before Dick ever took the stage, he believed he would become a minister. On Sundays, his mother made sure they attended church every Sunday. At the age of 15, he even gave a sermon. Making others feel better appealed to him. Making other people happy, like his preacher did every week, used to be his aim. Then came school productions. When he began acting, everything was different. His theater teacher encouraged him to pursue acting over his initial goal of becoming a preacher. He hardly ever had the opportunity to perform on television. There was another factor that nearly prevented it from happening. When he was 16, they informed him that he had a cardiac murmur. Running, football, or any other sport was out of the question. I was devastated by the news. But since he was unable to participate in athletics, he shifted to acting classes. He received his first part that fall, and it felt natural. He will always remember the feelings he had from that compliment. What he initially believed to be a curse ended up becoming the thing that helped him locate the stage. 2 years later, in 1944, Dick made a decision that stunned everyone. He attempted to enlist in the military after dropping out of high school during World War II. Dick didn't see combat, but he entertained troops on the home front, so it didn't matter to him. He just wanted to help, and he wasn't going to give up. After being accepted, Dick dreamed of flying planes, but that dream didn't last long. He was only 6 feet 1 inch and 130 pounds, so he ate bananas non-stop until he finally passed on the 4th try. His lack of combat skills and his poor performance in drills led them to hire him as a radio announcer, a job he obtained in a very peculiar way. An officer handed him a piece of paper and instructed him to read it. This was his audition, and he was hired as the voice of a show called Flight Time. That bizarre moment in the restroom began a career that would reach millions of people. Dick didn't stop at radio. He moved into the entertainment branch of the military, where he built sets, performed in stage shows, ran comedy shows, played music, and even cracked jokes over loudspeakers in the mess hall. These brief, chaotic performances weren't glamorous, but they taught him how to think quickly and maintain his composure, and how to connect with an audience wherever he was. Years later, those same skills would help him land jobs in TV and film. It wasn't a big job, but it gave him a voice, and people started to recognize it. He wasn't famous yet, but he was getting there. Then he failed. Instead of going straight into show business, he tried to open an advertising agency in Danville, but it didn't last. He lost money and confidence, and it could have ended everything. Dick returned home after the war ended in 1946, when he was just 21 years old, and he got a job spinning records on WDAN, his local radio station. But that failure was a turning point. Feeling desperate, he teamed up with a friend named Phil Erickson to form a comedy duo. That one decision set him on the path to entertainment. Together they became Eric and Van, the Merry Mutes, an act that relied on mime, music, and comedy without a single spoken word. While everyone else chased punchlines, they lip-synced to old records and let body language steal the laughs. They started in West Coast nightclubs and stayed on the road for over 5 years. That's around 2,000 nights of constant performing, constant traveling, and constant practice. They even made it onto early television in Atlanta, where mime acts were a rare sight. For Van Dyke, this stretch of time sharpened everything. His timing, his stamina, and his comfort with a live audience long before anyone knew his name. On February 12, 1948, something unusual happened on live radio. Dick Van Dyke and his girlfriend Marjorie Willett got married in front of 15 million listeners. They were broke, and the national radio show bride and groom offered to pay for their wedding and honeymoon if they agreed to say their vows live. So, they did. 2 microphones, a minister, and a room full of strangers made it official. It was an early glimpse into how entertainment and real life could mix on air. The marriage lasted 36 years and brought them 4 children. Long before reality shows made wedding drama into a business, Van Dyke and Willett lived through one of the earliest and most public moments of it. In the early 1950s, Van Dyke found himself in New Orleans, working at WDSU-TV Channel 6, the city's first television station. He didn't start big. He did everything from announcing to hosting music shows to comedy skits. He even filled airtime during the station's noon news. The station was a pioneer. It later became the first in the Deep South to broadcast in color, and Van Dyke was in the middle of it all, trying new material every week. It was a demanding job, but he learned fast. New Orleans audiences expected quick laughs and lively energy, and Van Dyke gave them both. Looking back, that job taught him how to survive live television. Then, in 1954, Van Dyke made his first national TV appearance on Chance of a Lifetime, an ABC show that helped new performers get their start. His comedy-backed mime act impressed both viewers and producers, and he soon secured guest roles on national variety shows such as The Phil Silvers Show and The Pat Boone's Chevy Showroom. Producers quickly realized that Van Dyke could do more than just mime, and in just 5 years, he went from being a guest performer to a Broadway star, a feat that most comedians take 10 years to achieve. Van Dyke made it look easy, but he had years of silent practice and small gigs behind him. In 1956, a friend from Van Dyke's Army days recommended him to the network, and it worked, as Van Dyke secured a 7-year contract. Networks typically wouldn't give long-term contracts to comedians who hadn't been successful across the nation, but Van Dyke had something different. He soon became co-host of the CBS Morning Show, and Walter Cronkite joined him for the news segment. The show didn't last long, but the opportunity did, and by late 1959, Van Dyke had made it to Broadway. His first show, The Girls Against the Boys, opened in November and closed 2 weeks later after only 16 performances. It could have been a disaster. Big names like Bert Lahr and Shelley Berman were in it, and Van Dyke only had a few small parts. But most new actors would have been disappointed by the quick closure, but Van Dyke took it as a lesson, seeing how Broadway operated and how easily things could go wrong. 5 months later, in April 1960, he returned to Broadway, this time as the lead, playing Albert F. Peterson in a new musical called Bye Bye Birdie, which was obviously based on Elvis Presley and followed a pop star who is abruptly called up to the military. Van Dyke was a risky choice because he had little stage experience, but he did a great job. His energy, awkward charm, and timing made the role work, and he went from a supporting actor to the lead in less than 6 months. That kind of jump didn't just happen, he had to earn it. By April 1961, he was 35 years old and had won a Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. Bye Bye Birdie was a huge hit. The show ran for 607 performances before closing in October 1961. It won 4 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, Songs like Put on a Happy Face and One Last Kiss became radio hits. The musical didn't just entertain. It showed how America's teens are obsessed with fame, music, and change. Carl Reiner didn't write for anyone else when he first came up with the idea for the Dick Van Dyke Show. He wrote it for himself. It was called Head of the Family, and in 1959 he filmed a pilot with himself as the star. However, the networks weren't impressed, and the show didn't sell. We'll find a better actress to play you. This actor was Dick Van Dyke. Prior to October 3, 1961, Van Dyke had never been in charge of a TV show. But when CBS aired the new version, everything changed. Van Dyke played Rob Petrie, a comedy writer based on Reiner's own life. The chemistry, the stories, and the casting all worked, and Reiner's show, which was on the verge of being lost, became a classic. Casting Mary Tyler Moore as Laura Petrie was also difficult because she was only 23 and not well known when she tried out. Renowned producers Leonard and Thomas believed in the story and told Reiner to let someone else play the lead. Reiner wasn't happy about it, but he agreed, and Leonard even told him, "You won't fail." She nearly skipped the audition because her accent sounded too polished, and they had already been rejected multiple times, but once they began acting together, something clicked. She was quick, confident, and brought out the best in every scene, and the cast began working as an improv team. They could almost read each other's minds, and their performances felt natural, real, and full of energy. Rob and Laura became one of TV's most adored couples. Off-screen, there was no romance, just a focus on making each scene flawless. Later, they joked that not having an affair was a terrible waste, but it kept the magic on screen. Audiences and critics took notice, and Dick Van Dyke won the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series 3 consecutive years, 1964, 1965, and 1966. Van Dyke's performance stood out among the many sitcoms that competed for viewers' attention. He was quick, endearing, and funny without ever going too far. The show continued to win and garner respect, and in just 5 years, with only 158 episodes, it won 15 Emmy Awards, garnered 27 wins and 24 nominations overall across major awards for writing, acting, and the series as a whole. At the time, winning just one Emmy was a huge deal, and this show won so many that it exceeded expectations. Years later, both TV Guide and the Writers Guild continued to rank it as one of the best shows ever produced, and even after the final episode aired in June 1966, it continued to be popular, with reruns and new generations discovering Rob and Laura Petrie. Van Dyke's performance left such a mark that even after he starred in Mary Poppins and Diagnosis, Murder, people still saw him as Rob Petrie first. The writing, the cast, and the balance between home and work stories helped make it a model for future sitcoms. It had a clear, heartfelt ending, too. That gave the story even more weight and helped seal its legacy. While the Dick Van Dyke Show made him a household name, Van Dyke's first major movie came in 1963 with Bye Bye Birdie. He had already played the role on Broadway and won a Tony Award, but the film brought it to a much bigger audience. It combined rock and roll with a fun look at fame, inspired by the time Elvis Presley was drafted into the Army. Van Dyke starred as Albert Peterson, and he shared the screen with Anne Margaret, who became a breakout star. She even earned a Golden Globe nomination. One song in particular, Put on a Happy Face, became one of Van Dyke's signature moments. Critics pointed out that his talent was even bigger than people had seen on TV. The movie proved he could carry musicals on the big screen, too. Then came Mary Poppins in 1964. Van Dyke was so heavily made up that he was nearly unrecognizable. In fact, the credits listed him as Navkid Keed, an anagram of his real name, that it almost didn't happen that he also played Mr. Dawes Sr., the old bank manager. Walt Disney wasn't sure about the idea, so Van Dyke offered to pay $4,000 of his own money just for the opportunity. The trick worked, and he won a Golden Globe and appeared in one of the most cherished family films ever made, returning decades later in the sequel, this time as Mr. Dawes Jr. The Mary Poppins soundtrack was also a huge hit, selling over 2.3 million copies in 1964. It sold more than 6 million copies by 1968 and topped the Billboard album chart for 14 weeks, which was unusual for a children's album. Walt Disney reportedly requested that Feed the Birds be played in his office every week, and the album was so successful that the Oxford Dictionary added the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious to its list of words. In 1968, Van Dyke starred in the film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which was based on a book by Ian Fleming, the man behind James Bond, and was produced by Albert R. Broccoli, who was also known for the Bond series. The songs, written by the same team behind Mary Poppins, gave the film its energy. Van Dyke's performance as a loving father and playful inventor helped carry the story. The cast also included Sally and Howes and Gert Frobe, who had played the villain Goldfinger in a Bond film. The movie was a box office hit, and the title song earned an Oscar nomination. It quickly became another family favorite. By 1969, Van Dyke decided to show a different side of himself. In the comic, directed by Carl Reiner, he played Billy Bright, a silent film star whose life goes off track. The movie wasn't light or musical. It was serious and emotional. Bright becomes successful but is consumed by ego and addiction. The film was partly inspired by real-life silent film legends like Buster Keaton. It came out at a time when Hollywood was shifting to more realistic stories. The comic didn't make a lot of money at the time, but critics later praised it for its honest look at fame and failure. It also proved that Van Dyke could handle dramatic roles just as well as comedy. His battle with alcoholism worsened over the course of 7 years, and by 1972, he was so broken that he checked himself into a rehab hospital for 3 weeks because he felt suicidal. He began drinking to cope with social situations, but it became much more dangerous. He compared the grip of alcohol to that of heroin, and during rehab, he went through a painful withdrawal in the psych ward and faced the reality that he was truly addicted. That moment changed him. After a few missteps, something finally clicked. He became so sick at the thought of alcohol that he lost all desire, and he hasn't had a drink since. He is now in his late 90s and attributes his long life to staying sober and fit. He and his wife, Margie, had been together for over 20 years, but after he began an affair with Michelle Triola, who worked for his agent, they became estranged. In 1976, he confessed that the affair made things worse and that the guilt tore him apart. He and Margie were both struggling with drugs and alcohol, and she ended up checking into the same hospital shortly after him. Despite this, he and Margie remained in contact and concentrated on raising their 4 children together, and their marriage ended officially in 1984, after 36 years. The divorce was a significant turning point in Van Dyke's life because it gave him the opportunity to start over, work on staying sober, and begin a new chapter in his life. Margie passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2008. Even though they had been apart for years, her death hit him hard. He said it felt like he had lost part of himself. Meanwhile, his relationship with Michelle Triola lasted over 3 decades. They began living together around 1976 and stayed committed until her death in 2009. Michelle had once made headlines in a legal fight with actor Lee Marvin, but to Van Dyke, she was someone who gave him understanding during his most troubled years. They never got married, but he often said that she helped him feel grounded. When she was dying from lung cancer, he stayed by her side, singing to her in her final moments. Even though the way their relationship started was controversial, it became one of the most meaningful parts of his life. In the middle of all these personal struggles, Van Dyke made a big return to TV in a surprising way. In 1993, he took on a role very different from his usual comedy parts. He became Dr. Mark Sloan in Diagnosis, Murder, a crime series that mixed mystery and family drama. His real-life son, Barry, played his on-screen son. The show nearly got cancelled after just 2 seasons, but it bounced back and became a fan favorite. It ended up running for 8 seasons with 178 episodes, plus 2 movies. It even lasted longer than his famous sitcom from the 60s. The show gave him a whole new audience and kept his career alive. But just when things seemed stable, Van Dyke faced a strange medical problem that lasted for years. In the early 2000s, he started hearing a pounding noise in his head. It felt like a heartbeat and got worse whenever he tried to lie down. He saw many doctors and went through every test, but no one could explain it. By 2013, the problem was so bad that he had to cancel a major event in New York because he was too exhausted to travel. Eventually, he mentioned the problem online, and someone suggested it might be his dental implants. That turned out to be the cause. Once he fixed the issue, the noise faded. It was a strange medical mystery that haunted him for 7 years. In 1987, he faced one of the most painful moments of his life. His 13-year-old granddaughter, Jessica, contracted chickenpox and, like many children, was given aspirin to help with the fever. A few days later, however, she became confused and then very sick, and she passed away. She had developed Reye syndrome, a rare condition linked to giving aspirin to children during viral infections. At the time, only a few thousand cases had been reported in the US, but the death rate was high. Jessica's death occurred just days before new research revealed how dangerous aspirin could be for children, and Van Dyke became a national voice warning other parents, making PSAs to help other parents avoid the same tragedy. He continued to appear on television throughout the 1980s and 1990s, appearing in films such as The Country Girl with Faye Dunaway and even playing a villain in the film Dick Tracy. He demonstrated his ability to play both serious and comedic roles in 1990 by appearing in guest spots on popular TV shows like The Golden Girls and Matlock. He also re-starred with his son in Airwolf, which kept him in the spotlight and demonstrated his ability to surprise people. In August 2013, at the age of 87, he was driving his Jaguar along Route 101 near Los Angeles when the car suddenly filled with smoke and flames shot out from the front. A man driving by saw him slumped inside and, without hesitation, stopped, ran over, and pulled Van Dyke out. In a matter of seconds, the entire vehicle was on fire, but Van Dyke was unharmed. His wife shared a photo of the wreck online, showing the car was a burnt shell. In 2012, he married 40-year-old Arlene Silver, a makeup artist who he had met at an awards show 6 years earlier. Some were critical of the 46-year age gap, while others were just shocked, but Van Dyke said it was one of the best choices he had ever made, and they are still together 10 years later, sharing their lives like best friends, dancing, singing, and laughing, and whenever someone inquires about the age difference, he simply smiles and responds, "It works." In June 2024, at the age of 98, he accomplished something no one else had done. He played a mysterious man with no memory for a guest appearance on Days of Our Lives, and the audience loved him. After accepting the award, he joked, "If I had known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself." He was still at the top of his game, nearly 70 years after his first TV hit, and shortly after that, he appeared in a Coldplay music video, dancing barefoot and talking about death, love, and life at the age of nearly 99. He claimed he felt at peace and wasn't afraid. The full version, which was released just before his 99th birthday, touched many people with the way he moved and spoke. It didn't feel like an elderly man nearing the end of his life, but rather like someone who was still full of wonder. In December 2024, wildfires struck Malibu, and Van Dyke attempted to put out the fire with a pool hose, but the hose became tangled, and he fell. He was nearly 99 years old, and he was in serious danger. 3 neighbors noticed him and came to his aid. He had survived 4 previous wildfires, but this one was different. He later admitted, "I wasn't prepared." Firefighters saved his house, but the guest house was damaged, but he survived again because of the people around him. He doesn't skip any of his weekly workouts, which he says keeps him going, even at 99 years old. He stretches, does yoga, and does leg presses, sometimes even single leg presses. His friend Ted Danson once claimed to have seen Van Dyke dancing between machines at the gym rather than walking. After the gym, he swims, and then takes naps. He lives by it, and he's not finished yet. He's already planning for his 100th birthday, which is December 13, 2025, and he says he needs more time because he has things to do, including writing a new book that will be published on November 18, right before his birthday, and that will discuss what he's learned, what drove him, and what brought him joy. He's not looking back.